Okay, so we've gone over what this whole show is about and a bit of an insight to it, but let me just get straight into the nitty gritty. So it's not going to be specific to esports. There will be a bunch of different variants. It won't always be logos. It won't always be branding. I could delve into actual advertisements that you see on TV, radio ads and whatnot. I really enjoy marketing and advertisement and branding and this type of stuff, so I want to do more content around that. Now, breaking down my own branding is one thing, but breaking down other people's branding is another. Of course, it's always going to be opinionated. There will be some things that are factual and some things that are obvious to the eye and some things that aren't so obvious to the eye. So, take it with a grain of salt. I'm not telling you exactly what it is or what it should be. I'm just giving, majority of the time, my own opinion on it, but also what I feel was the intention behind the things that were done. So to give you some examples of some larger corporations that I'll be touching on and some branding that I'll be breaking down, let's go for some of the big names. So I'll whip this up here. So let's start with Amazon, okay? Pretty much everyone knows what Amazon is now. They own Twitch and one of the biggest online retailers in the world, and is absolutely blowing up. I was reading an article just the other day that if you invested when they launched in 1997, you would have, I think it was an 87,000% return on your investment, which is absolutely incredible. So $1 invested is $87,000. It's insane. But anyway, so for those of you that don't know, when Amazon launched, they were an online book retailer. So they just sold books, essentially. Now, the logo seems pretty standard, right? There's nothing flashed going on. It's a pretty standard font going on here. You notice the Z is a bit different to the rest, but I think that's just a nice little touch. But what's important to note here, and remember, they were a book retailer, an online book retailer, okay? And in books, you have the Dewey Decibel system, right? And it's pretty much from then on alphabetical. Now, why this is important is because A and Z has an arrow in between. Okay, so that insinuates that, look, we've got everything from A to Z. Okay, you can go from A to Z, look through our book collection, we've got it all. Which is pretty important. I think it's a nice little touch. It's a pretty obvious one. But why this is so important now and such a great logo now is because of their new business model and being an online retailer to pretty much everything, is they do have everything from A to Z, which makes this logo even more incredible and probably even better now than it was before. So I really like this logo. It's a pretty simple one. There's not much else to it that I can see anyway. And, it just works. It's really good. So that's a really nice one to start with, I think, for our content talks and give you a bit more of a feel for what I'm talking about. But I'll move forward with my next one. FedEx. Now, FedEx is a brilliant one. This is some of the best branding I've seen in forever. So FedEx, for those of you that don't know, is a courier company in the United States. Obviously, they do some carting around the world as well, with your air travels and whatnot, and sending parcels overseas, but predominantly from America, and they just ship things around, a mailing service essentially. Now, again, pretty standard logo here, nothing real flash going on. You'll notice though that the E and D are pretty, they've got a nice little round shapes, but then you move over to the E and the X and it's super sharp. There's no roundness to it. And that's deliberate, okay? So it's obvious to a fair few people, but some people really miss this one. But they've got an arrow here in between the E and the X. So the arrow being in the E and X, which stands for express, is perfect because it's an arrow pointing forward, at least in the direction that we read. So anything pointing to the right-hand side is always moving forward. And having that under the express is a really good symbol of, we're moving things, we're going fast, we're going the right direction. But it's just also a nice, nifty little logo for the simple fact that they're a courier service, they're a courier company, and they've put in an arrow to symbolize what they do. And it's very subtle, but it's also stands out a lot. So it's not so blatant to the eye that it's like, oh geez, relax, don't overload me with your branding, we get it. But it stands out enough to like, okay, that's kind of cool, I like that, and I can appreciate that. Now, when you stare at it long enough, it's really obvious, but if you just glance over it, you'll probably never notice it. So it's really nice, and it's definitely one of the better ones out there. It's one of the more subtle ones that does the job well. Now I'll move on yet again. Now this one's more related to esports. I'll just zoom in a bit. It's a bit of a blurry picture, but you'll get the idea. Okay, so the Houston Outlaws, which is an Overwatch League team owned by Optic Gaming, or at least, you know, that whole business structure, it falls under there. Now, why this is a super good logo and why it's important. Now, Optic Hex went over it. The owner of Optic went over this logo, why he liked it and why it was important. So we'll just begin. Okay, so Houston Outlaws, right? So there are a few contradicting things in this, which is being outlaws, but then they've got the Lone Star and then the guns, which could resemble both sides of the coin, which is the contradiction. But why it's good is Houston, okay? So let's look at Houston first. It's Texas. Now, Texas is the Lone Star state. So, okay, they've got to put the star there. All right, it's a given, all right? You can't not have that there. But then they've got, if you look at the guns, they've got these little green flicks on the end of it. And, I mean, I guess to some people it's not too obvious, but I immediately seen it and thought, that's brilliant. So they've made the guns pretty symmetrical. I think, in fact, they might be identical, just flipped, but it outlines the shape of a longhorn, all right, which is a very common animal over there. It's pretty much what Texas is known for, the longhorn. And, you know, you've got your eyes here where your triggers would be. And it's really well done to resemble Texas even further. Then you've got the pistols. Obviously, the pistols are, you know, part of the Outlaws and, you know, the Texas whole cowboy type of thing. So it's a really good logo. They've got the green in there, which then links back to Optic. So it's a really nice, neat logo. It's very easily transferable across all mediums. You can put it on merchandise. You can do a lot with it in terms of illustrations and online graphics and media animations. So it's really easy and versatile. It's a great logo. The only thing I'm iffy on is the star. I mean, it does need to be there for the simple fact it's Texas, but I think the logo could work just as well without it. But outside of that, it's a great logo. I mean, if you just imagined this being an actual animal instead of kind of an outline of a skull, it would be brilliant as well. And one of the better esports logos, but in the Overwatch League, it's not even the best. And I will go over the best one in a later episode and give it a great breakdown and go across their entire branding. But this is probably second. The rest of the Overwatch League branding is a bit how you going. So anyway, and then we'll move on to one of the biggest brands of all time, McDonald's. So everyone knows the Golden Arches. It's a pretty standard one. I'm not going to go too in depth with this, but if you've seen the movie, it is called The Founder. Great movie. Michael Keaton goes over how McDonald's was founded. It was actually essentially stolen by two brothers, but anyway, that's a different story. So they had a concept building with the Golden Arches as, you know, their big standout feature, and it drew a lot of attention, obviously. But the arches resembles French fries and how they cascade out of the packet, of the packaging that they're in, which is a nice touch. It does resemble that, and I think a lot of people don't even think about it like that. But if you look at it in depth, you know, it works well. You got your M for your McDonald's. It's a very recognizable symbol, whether that's because of how society perceives McDonald's and one of the largest food chains in the world, or because it is a good logo. I'm not sure. But what is important to note is they're yellow, but then they've also backed it up with the red, which are kind of clashing colors in general. But it is scientifically proven that the colors red and yellow invoke hunger in people. Whether they had this information back then or not, I'm not sure, but it is super important to note that these two colors make people hungry, and that's the focal point of their entire branding. You have Ronald McDonald running around in those colors. Everything is branded in those colors, your boxes, your packaging. It's a very big piece of their brand. So it's smart, it's easy, it's recognizable, it's simple. They did very well. So that's pretty much all I have to say for this episode of Content Talks. So I'm not sure if people completely understand what I'll be doing yet, but hopefully I'll keep talking about content and you'll understand what I'm saying, and you will enjoy these episodes. If you have any brands or logos or any type of content you'd like me to talk about, if you want me to review your content, anything at all, feel free to shoot me a message or send me videos or links or whatever it might be, and I'll see if I can fit it in, if I have an opinion on it, if I have any in-depth analysis, anything at all. Again, I'm no expert. This is just a bit of a hobby of mine. I like to look at this stuff and analyze it. These were very, very simple examples. These weren't any ridiculously in-depth analysis of anything, and don't base everything on this. This was just a bit of a teaser, an appetizer for you, if you will, to get the feel for what I'll be talking about. And I'll have a fair few of this coming forward over the next coming days and weeks and months, and hopefully this becomes a continuous thing. Like I said, I really enjoy it and I want to make something of it and pump out as much as I can and go over a broad range of things. So hope you enjoyed it, and give me your thoughts and feedback. Thank you.